Grand Rising all. Hope everyone's doing well.
Grand Rising.
Peace, y'all. Peace, everybody.
Let us know if you can hear us okay. Put some ones in the chat so we know that we're coming through fine and that you can hear Bones and no sellout of myself. Or let us know if the music in the background is too loud.
2212. Mic check.
Grand Rising Indigenous Intelligence, and congratulations on registering your business. We got to go ahead and do a community spotlight on you so we can get your business out there so people can know about you. Grand Rising Oak Cliff, Grand Rising Macadon 1, Grand Rising You Don't Want It, Grand Rising Mr. TJ, No Sellout,
Hey, that's Meek.
Grand Rising Alfred Jones,
Meek,
we got
thanks.
Prince William County in the building. Grand Rising to Ladarian Woods. Please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Grand Rising, thanks for joining us.
Peace,
And Grand
peace.
Rising, David Corey. And Grand Rising to anyone else who's just out there listening and want this information.
What did you do? What did you do?
So what we're doing today is we're picking up where we left off with the Indian Wars. And we are going to be covering the last tribe to be fighting in the Indian Wars under American Revolution, which are the Cherokee. And so the Cherokee fought on the side of the British during the American Revolutionary War. So what we're going to be doing is giving you some background on the tribe itself and who Genealogy said they are. And as always, we'll put the information in the in the chat so you guys, ladies and gentlemen, can take a look at it. If there are individuals out there that are part of the Cherokee and there's some information that you can provide to either corroborate or debunk the information that's posted, please do not hesitate to bring it to our attention. Also, too, we just want to make sure that this information gets out, and we'll be able to tie in as we start to do more of these, covering these tribal wars, as you'll start to see how a lot of these nonprofits got instituted, how a lot of these universities got erected, how our ancestors made moves that they thought that were in their best interest that today would be considered selling us out. So, you'll be able to get a different perspective, if you will. As always, the Europeans are not blameless or faultless, but as you'll discover with this treaty that the Cherokee signed, that our ancestors have a lot more to blame than we originally anticipated or could have thought. So it was interesting. We was reading over the treaty last night, and all I can say is time for the hard hats, time for the tools. It's time to get digging. Bones, no sellout. Anything that you want to say before we get started?
No, we can get started.
Congrats to those who are utilizing HUD Section 3, if you are.
Grand Rising Copper Color Queen. Hope all is well. So again, we're going to be covering the Cherokee Indians. I'm going to give you a little back history about them based off of this information from Ancestry. And remember that this is just one source. It does not mean that they're all-encompassing or actual factual, but it's a start to do your research. And again, if you are a part of the Cherokee tribe or Cherokee Nation and you have factual information to corroborate what we read or to even debunk it, please do not hesitate to correct us and provide the source. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start reading from the document. So whenever you're ready, Mr. No Sellout, floor is all yours.
Yep, I was talking on mute. All right. All right, where we at? All right, Cherokee Indians. And the link is in the chat from where we're reading right now. Access genealogy. All right, Cherokee Indians, a powerful detached tribe of Iroquoian family, formerly holding the whole mountain region of the South Alleghenies in Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina, and South Carolina, North Georgia, East Tennessee, and Northeast Alabama, and claiming even to the Ohio River. The Cherokee have long held their tribal name is a corruption of Salagi or Saragi, the name by which they commonly call themselves, and which may be derived from the Choctaw Cherokee cave people, in allusion to the numerous caves in their mountain country. They sometimes also call themselves Anayawanya, real people, or Anikitu Wagi, people of Kituwa, one of their most important ancient settlements. Their northern kinsmen, the Iroquois, called them Oya Taga Ronan, I hope that's how to pronounce it, inhabitants of the cave country. Let's see. And the Delawares and connected tribes called them Kituwa or Kitawa. From the settlement already noted, they seem to be identical with the Ricococans. Is that right? Ricococans, who invaded central Virginia in 1658, and with the ancient Talagui of Delaware tradition, who were represented to have been driven southward from the upper Ohio River region by the combined forces of the Iroquois and Delawares. And then it jumps into Cherokee language. The language has three principal dialects. Elati, or lower, spoken on the heads of Savannah River in South Carolina and Georgia. Middle, spoken chiefly on the waters of Tuskegee River in northwestern North Carolina, and now the prevailing dialect on the East Cherokee Reservation. Number three, Atali, mountain or upper, spoken throughout most of the upper Georgia, East Tennessee, and extreme western North Carolina. The lower dialect was the only one which had the R sound and is now extinct. The upper dialect is that which has been exclusively used in the native literature of the tribe. Cherokee tribe history. Traditional linguistic and archaeological evidence shows that Cherokee originated in the north, but they were found in possession of the South Allegheny region when first encountered by De Soto in 1540. Their relations with the Carolina colonies began 150 years later. In 1736, the Jesuit Priber started the first mission among them and attempted to organize their government on a civilized basis. In 1759, under the leadership of a gangsta, Oconostota, they began war with the English of Carolina. In the Revolution, they took sides against the Americans and continued the struggle almost without interval until 1794. During this period, parties of the Cherokee pushed down Tennessee River and formed new settlements at Chickamauga and the other points about the Tennessee-Alabama line. Shortly after 1800, missionary and educational work was established among them, and in 1820 they adopted a regular form of government modeled on that of the United States. In the meantime, large numbers of the more conservative Cherokee, wearied by the encroachments of the whites, had crossed the Mississippi and made new homes in the wilderness in what is now Arkansas. A year or two later, Sequoyah, a mixed blood, invented the alphabet, which at once raised them to the rank of a literary people. At the height of their prosperity, gold was discovered near the present Dahlonega, Georgia, within the limits of the Cherokee Nation, and at once a powerful agitation was begun for the removal of the Indians. After years of hopeless struggle under the leadership of their great chief, John Ross, they were compelled to submit the inevitable and the Treaty of the New Echota, December 29, 1835. The Cherokees sold their entire remaining territory and agreed to remove beyond the Mississippi to a country there to be set apart for them to present 18. Hold on, let me read that one more time. The Cherokees sold their entire remaining territory and agreed to remove beyond the Mississippi to a country there to be set apart for them to present 1890 Cherokee Nation and Indian Territory. The removal was accomplished in the winter of 1838 to 39. After considerable hardship and the loss of nearly 1/4 of their number, the unwilling Indians being driven out by military force and making the long journey on foot.
So hold on for a second. So their great chief John Ross signed the Treaty of Echota, December 29th, 1835, and sold their entire remaining territory beyond the Mississippi to the United States. That's a lot of land, ain't it?
Sound like a whole lot of land.
So we will be covering that treaty, the new Echota Treaty, after we finish reading this. But I just wanted to point that out because
it turns out to be over 8,000 acres, 800,000 acres.
You breaking up a little bit, Bones.
Turned out to be over 800,000 acres.
You
what
said
they were given.
800,000 acres. That's a lot of land.
Yep.
So we're going to find out exactly how this happened, but we want you to put that in the back of your mind right now, or put that on the forefront of your mind, and pay attention to the chief and how this happened. I'm sorry, Stella, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. On reaching their destination, they reorganized their national government, which their capital at Tahlequah, Tahlequah, admitting to equal privileges the earlier immigrants, known as old settlers, quote unquote. A part of the Arkansas Cherokee had previously gone down into Texas, where they had obtained a grant of land in the east part of the state from the Mexican government. The later Texan revolutionists refused to recognize their rights, and in spite of their efforts of the efforts of General Sam Houston, who defended the Indian claim, a conflict was precipitated, resulting in 1839 the killing of the Cherokee chief Bowl with a large number of his men by the Texan troops, and the expulsion of Cherokee from Texas. When the main body of the tribe was removed to the west, several hundred fugitives escaped to the mountains, where they lived as refugees for a time, until in 1842, through the efforts of William H. Thomas, an influential trader, they received permission to remain on land set apart for their use in western North Carolina. They constitute the present eastern band of Cherokee, residing chiefly in the Qualla Reservation in Swain and Jackson counties, with several outlying settlements. The Cherokee and the Cherokee Nation were for years divided into two hostile factions, those who had favored and those who had opposed the treaty removal. One second. Hardly had these differences been adjusted when the Civil War burst upon them. Being slave owners and surrounded by Southern influences, a large part of each of the 5 civilized tribes of the territory enlisted in the service of the Confederacy, while others adhered to the national government. The territory of the Cherokee was overrun and turned by both armies, and the close of the war found them prostrated. The treaty in 1866, they were readmitted to the protection of the United States, but obliged to liberate their black slaves and admit them to equal citizenship. In 1867 and 1870, the Delawares and the Shawnee, respectively, numbering together about 1,750, were admitted from Kansas and incorporated with the nation. In 1889, a Cherokee Commission was created for the purpose of abolishing the tribal governments and opening the territories to white settlement, with the result that after 15 years of a negotiation, an agreement was made by which the government of the Cherokee Nation came to a final end, March 3rd, 1906. The Indian lands were divided, and the Cherokee Indians, native adopted, became citizens of the United States.
Stop for a second.
Nope.
You said nope. Grand Rising Pamela Hall, Grand Rising I Am Flying Squirrel. We are covering the Cherokee Nation, which was the last tribe that we are discussing in the American Revolutionary War, and their part in it. They fought alongside the British against the then 13 colonies, which would eventually become the United States. So we're in the process of talking about what happened and what led up to these treaties. And so we put the link in the chat, and what we're seeing is another instance of a divide. We're seeing an instance of choosing sides. And with what's going on and what's being talked about in this tribal identity via the accessgenealogy.com, we have a little bit more insight to what's going on and what some of the thought process could have been. So the Treaty of 1866, they were readmitted to the protection of the United States, which basically means or implies that they were outside of the protection of the United States for a while. And they are obliged to liberate their black slaves. We know that there's a bit of a kidnapping of information with that, and you'll see exactly how that happened when it comes to separating the darker Indians from the lighter Indians, and you'll definitely be able to see it without incident. So they admitted the Kansas. I guess Kansas was a form of Indians, and they incorporated those Indians from Kansas into the nation. In 1889, the Cherokee Commission was created for the purpose of abolishing the tribal governments. So the question is who was it that created this Cherokee Commission of 1889? Because it was created for the purpose of abolishing the tribal governments and opening the territories to white settlements. Go ahead, Bones. Go ahead.
Oh no, we're gonna get to it. It's in there.
So then it goes on to read that with the result that after 15 years of negotiation, so that was a 15-year negotiation. That's a long time to be negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
So the negotiation came to a final end in 1906. Now, Bones, you talked about this a lot about what happened in 1906. So the negotiation came to an end in 1906, and the Indian lands were divided, and Cherokee Indians, natives, adapted to become citizens of the United States. Basically meaning, from this language, they were no longer considered a tribe as we know tribes to be then.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bones, can you share with us why 1906 is a prominent year, particularly for the American Indian?
Please do.
Yeah, 1906 is the year that you had a couple of chiefs and representatives go to Congress, and on Congress floor told them they had to do something about the melanated Indian because there was too many of us. And if it came down to a vote, they couldn't keep power. That's the 1906 Congress speech that was given on the floor of Congress at that.
So it just so happens that after 15 years of negotiation on March 3rd, 1906, the Cherokee Nation ends up coming to an agreement, and the land of the Cherokee Indians is divided, and they start admitting white settlers. I'm just saying. So.
Wait till you get down in a minute, man. They were taking everybody.
Pamela Hall says she's got to go water in the garden. Go ahead, sis. Take care of your business. We're going to be here.
We are there. We are there.
All right. My bad for interrupting. No sellout. I just wanted to point that out. So we're at the portion of the Cherokee Nations where they break down the the Cherokee. It says the Cherokee have 7 clans, and then it starts to name them and tells what some of those words mean.
So yeah, it has Cherokee Nation. So the Cherokee have 7 clans. 1, Ani Waya, or wolf. 2, Ani Kawi, deer. 3, Ani Si Squaw, bird. 4, Ani Weedi, paint. 5, Ani Sa Ani. No, nothing there. 6, Ani Ga Tagui. 7, Ani G Lay. Yeah, some symbols that don't belong on the computer. So the names of the last 3 cannot be translated with certainty. There is evidence that there were anciently 14, which by extinction or absorption have been reduced to their present number. The Wolf clan is the largest and most important. The 7 clans are frequently mentioned in the ritual prayers and even in the printed laws of the tribe. They seem to have had a connection with the 7 mother towns of the Cherokee, described by Cumming in 1730 as having each a chief whose office was hereditary in the female line. The Cherokee are probably about as numerous now, 1905, as is when this is stated, I guess, as at any period in their history, with the exception of an estimate in 1730, which placed them at about 20,000. Most of those up to a recent period gave them 12,000 or 14,000, and in 1758 they were computed at only 7,500. The majority of the earlier estimates are probably too low, as the Cherokee occupied so extensive a territory that only a part of them came in contact with the whites. In 1708, Governor Johnson estimated them at 60 villages and at least 500 men. In 1715, they were officially reported to number 11,210, including 4,000 warriors and living in 60 villages. In 1720, were estimated to have been reduced to about 10,000, and again in the same year reported at about 11,500, including about 3,800 warriors. In 1729, they were estimated at 20,000, which at least 6,000 warriors and 64 towns and 4 villages. They are said to have lost 1,000 warriors in 1739 from smallpox and rum, and they suffered a steady decrease during their wars with the whites, extending from 1760 until after the close of the Revolution. Those in their original homes had again...
Stop. Back up.
Rum?
Yeah, they did from that. And smallpox.
Well, hold on. And rum?
They lost 1,000 warriors
To rum alone.
in 1739 from smallpox and rum. And a steady decrease, warring with whites.
So here's the thing. Either the rum was laced with smallpox, or, this is speculation, alcoholism was so rampant that you literally had Indians dying from cirrhosis of the liver.
Mm-hmm. It would make sense. How can our parents? Why would our parents? A lot of them. I know it runs in my family.
Yeah.
Alcoholism. Why would alcoholism run in our family through our blood if it wasn't? Man, I need to go see somebody.
David Corey says that sounds like an island deal. They love the rum today. Yeah, David, and as you can recall, as we were doing some of these, talked about some of these tribes, a lot of the Indians from the South America got sent over to the islands to cultivate that cane sugar to put into that rum. So you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, I didn't sell out. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
And don't forget, they were also giving rum and beer to the Indians at the time of the wars, boatloads of it for fighting.
Unlimited supply.
You wonder why there's a liquor store on every corner in our neighborhood.
Gun store, liquor store, gun store.
Something to think about.
All right. Those in their original homes had again increased to 16,542. That's so accurate. At the time of their forced removal to the west in 1838, but lost nearly 1/4 on the journey, 311 perishing in the steamboat accident on the Mississippi. Those already in the west before the removal were estimated at about 6,000. The Civil War in 1861 to 65 again checked their progress, but they recovered from its effects in a remarkably short time, and in 1885 numbered about 19,000, of whom about 17,000 were in Indian territory. Together with about 6,000 adopted whites, blacks, Delawares, and Shawnee, while the remaining 2,000 were still in their ancient homes in the east. Of this eastern band, 1,376 were on Qualla Reservation in Swain and Jackson counties, North Carolina. About 300 are on Chiowa River in Graham County, North Carolina, while the remainder, all of mixed blood, were scattered over East Tennessee, North Georgia, and Alabama. The eastern band lost about 300 by smallpox at the close of the Civil War. In 1902, there were officially reported 28,016 persons of Cherokee blood, including all degrees of admixture in the Cherokee Nation in the Cherokee Nation in the territory, but this includes several thousand individuals formerly repudiated by the tribal courts. There were also living in the nation about 3,000 adopted black freedmen, more than 2,000 adopted whites, and about 1,700 adopted Delaware, Shawnee, and other Indians. The tribe has a larger proportion of white admixture than any other of the 5 civilized tribes. For further study,
They tell you when they was taking everybody. You a Cherokee. You a Cherokee.
you get a Cherokee.
Matter of fact, all y'all over there Cherokee.
Who named you?
Grand Rising, Big Hawk, and welcome back, Pamela Hall. So it's interesting how they, because it's always been, if you do any research on the Cherokee Nation, it talks about them being the most powerful and the wealthiest tribe of all the 5 civilized tribes. And as we're looking here at this one source, which is not the main, which is not the most prominent source, or we're not intimating or indicating that this source is 100% accurate, but based off of where this is a good start to do your research, it implies that the Cherokee were taking on a lot of individuals and adopting a lot of people into their tribes from what they call black freedmen. Watch out for the kidnapping. More than 2,000 adopted whites and about 1,700 adopted Delaware, Shawnee, and other Indians. And let's not forget, there were also white slaves at this particular point in time. So how is it that the adopted whites happen to be adopted, but they weren't slaves or freedmen? But that's neither here nor there. And it says they have the larger proportion of white admixture than any other of the 5 civilized tribes. So here's something that we need to think about and ask ourselves. How is it that this tribe were able to do so many things, roam through so many territories, lose the protection of the government, only to gain the protection back after giving away all of its land east of the Mississippi, and still end up being the largest and wealthiest tribe today?
Go back to the Joseph Brant story.
Yeah, there's definitely was a power struggle. Our ancestors had a hand in it. When I say our ancestors, I'm talking about the melanated brown ones had a hand in it, not just the what people would call the mulattoes or the mixed ones, because you can't get a mixed baby unless there are 2 willing participants. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. The funny thing is, as we read more on, we'll start seeing that one of the main components that got us into the situation is still one of the main components now. Sending somebody else to negotiate on our behalf.
So you want to get into the actual treaty itself, Bones?
Yeah, we can start switching into the treaty, because the treaty is really gonna open it up for a lot of people that's listening.
All right. So Bones, I'll go ahead and no sellout. I can go ahead and pick up the reading from there. Definitely appreciate you for giving me a little break. That was
problem.
That was awesome.
I gotta practice reading sometimes.
Really? That's what we doing.
Yeah. No. Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and put the link to the treaty in the chat. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, men and women, Indians, Auchtoctones people.
Hold on, before you go into it, get them a fair warning. I'm finna get them a fair warning. What we finna enter, when you click that link, please make sure you got hard hats, steel toe boots, double strap seat belts, and you might need an excavator team, because this is finna go in.
And again, understanding that this is a source, not the main source, or an officially verified source, meaning there can be some things that can be contested. So this is just merely a start for us to continue to do our research and look into it. And I would love to speak with any Cherokee Indians who actually know and have information that can either debunk it, this information, or actually corroborate, like we've had people from tribes do with some of the other tribes, whether they be Tuscarora, Sioux, Choctaw, what have you. So, with that warning, oh yeah, Grand Rise LJ Free. My apologies for not mentioning you earlier. Hope you're doing well, sis.
Peace, LJ.
So, with that warning, we're gonna discuss the treaty that looked like it could be the treaty that a lot of the other tribes eventually end up mimicking. So pay attention to the dates. Please pay attention to
the names.
Yeah, and also pay attention to representatives.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, just because these people are labeled illiterate, what that means is they can't read the language that's written in. So I may be literate in the English language, but I'm illiterate in French. I'm illiterate in Spanish. I'm illiterate in Portuguese. I'm illiterate in Choctaw. You see what I'm saying? So, just pay attention. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start reading the Treaty of 1835. So, also please pay attention to the one of the chiefs that was representing the Cherokee tribe at this particular time. This actually is his account, Chief Charles Thompson, November 1875 to November 1879. Looks like a Quaker to me, but that's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. I'm going to go ahead and repost the link again, Pamela, so you can have it. She asking for it. That's what I love about the chat. They want that link. They want that proof. Proof is not a problem over here. Okay, so with that being said, the article of a treaty concluded at New Echota or Echota in the state of Georgia on the 29th day of December 1835 by General William Carroll and John F. Schermerhorn, commissioners on the part of the United States and the chiefs, headmen, and people of the Cherokee tribe of Indians. So these are the individuals that are representing this treaty at the particular point in time. General William Carroll and John F. Schermerhorn, who are commissioned on behalf of the United States, and the chiefs and headmen of the people of Cherokee tribe. So that means these are representatives that are signing on behalf. So one of them had to be a war chief. So let's look at the preamble. Grand Rising author. The preamble states, whereas the Cherokee are anxious to make arrangements with the government of the United States whereby the difficulties they've experienced by residents within the settled parts of the United States under the jurisdictions and laws of the state governments may be terminated and adjusted, and with a view of reuniting their people in one body and securing a permanent home for themselves and their posterity in the country selected by their forefathers without the territorial limits of the state sovereignties, and where they can establish and enjoy a government of their choice and perpetuate such a state of society as may be most consistent with their views, habits, and conditions, and as may tend to their individual comfort and their advancement in civilization. That's a lot of words to basically say, we about to put you in a place so y'all can be Indians, like your forefathers. But that's just me. Moving on. And whereas a delegation of the Cherokee Nation composed of Messrs. John Ross, who was then the chief, Richard Taylor Donald, McCoy Samuel Gunther, and Williams Roger, with full power and authority to conclude a treaty with the United States. So these are the Cherokee that had full power and authority. Keep in mind, they have full power and authority to act on behalf of the Cherokee Nation in a treaty with the United States. And they did this on the 28th day of February, 1835. Stipulate and agree with the government of the United States to submit to the Senate to fix the amount which would be allowed the Cherokee for their claims and for a cession of their lands east of the Mississippi River, and did agree to abide by the award of the Senate of the United States themselves to recommend the same to their people for their final determination. And whereas on such submissions the Senate advised that a sum not exceeding $5 million be paid to the Cherokee Indians for all their possessions east of the Mississippi River. So they're going to be paid somewhere short of $5 million for all the lands east of the Mississippi River. That is a steal, literally. And whereas this delegation, after said award of the Senate had been made, were called upon to submit propositions as to its disposition to be arranged in a treaty, which they refused to do, but insisted that the same should be referred to their nation and therein General Council to deliberate and determine on the subject to ensure harmony and good feelings among themselves. And whereas a certain other delegation composed of John Ridge, Elias Benoit, Archilla Smith, S.W. Bell, John West, A.M.A. Davis, and Ezekiel West, who represented the portion of the nation in favor of immigration to the Cherokee country west of the Mississippi, entered into propositions for a treaty with John F. Schermerhorn, commissioner on the part of the United States, which were to be submitted to their nation and for their final action and determination. So I'm gonna stop right here for a second because I just
remember when you say immigration, we talking about immigration with an E.
Yeah, immigration. So here's a funny thing. This just dawned on me, Bones, and I think you already caught this. But these individuals, John Ridge, Elias Benoit, Achilla Smith, S.W. Bell, John West, W.M.A. Davis, and Ezekiel West, there are at least 3 of these individuals who are negotiating not only on behalf of the United States, on behalf of the Cherokee that are leaving, but they're also the power of attorneys for the Cherokee who are staying. That's important.
You can see what's happening.
So that's not partial.
Nope.
That's not unbiased.
Nope.
Because you're representing the Cherokee that are leaving, meaning they're leaving the East Coast, Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, and they're representing these Cherokee that are going to Oklahoma or going out west. And they're also going to represent the Cherokee who choose to stay because they don't want to leave. Just keep that in mind. So, and whereas the Cherokee people at their last October council at Red Clay fully authorized and empowered a delegation of committee of 20 persons on their nation to enter into and conclude a treaty with the United States Commissioner, they present at that place or somewhere elsewhere, and as the people had good reason to believe that a treaty would then and there be made, or let a subsequent council at New Echota, which the commissioners, it was well known and understood, were authorized and instructed to convene for said purpose, and since the said delegation have gone on to Washington City with a view to close negotiations there, as stated by them, notwithstanding they were officially informed by the United States Commissioner that they would not be received by the President of the United States, and the government would transact no business of this nature with it, and that if a treaty was made, it must be done here in the nation, where the delegation at Washington last winter urged that it should be done for the purpose of promoting peace and harmony among the people. And since these facts have also been corroborated to us by the communication recently received by the Commissioner for the Governor of the United States, and read and explained to the people in open council, and therefore believing said delegation can affect nothing, and since our difficulties are daily increasing, and our situation is rendered more and more precarious, uncertain, and insecure in consequence of the legislation of the United States, and seeing no effectual way of relief but in accepting the liberal overtures of the United States. All that paragraph said, which is way too wordy for me, which is the predecessor to lawyer speak, is that we don't like the situation that we're in. We're going to send 20 persons to represent us because you keep forcing us in a situation that we don't like. But since we have no choice and you keep enforcing these uncomfortable situations on us, we have no choice but to accept these liberal overtures of the United States. So
and let's remember, though, these representatives that the Cherokees and tribes were picking, what was the qualifications that they were picking these people to go represent them in negotiations with the United States? Wasn't it stated that they were picking out the more fair-skinned ones, the ones that look more European, and sending them to go do the negotiations because they thought they would get a better deal because they look like them?
But you also got to remember, too, that these were the mulattoes that were mistreated by the tribes. So if I've been mistreated for a while and you send me to represent my tribe after all of a sudden, oh, now you need me, then what do you think I'm going to do? Something to think about.
Here we go with the unraveling. Info falling, watch your head, keep them hard hats on.
So, and it says, and whereas General William Carroll and John F. Schermerhorn were appointed commissioners on the part of the United States with full power and authority to conclude treaty with the Cherokees East, were directed by the President to convey the people of the nation in General Council at New Echota, and to submit said propositions to them with power and authority to vary the same as to meet the views of the Cherokee in reference to its details. And whereas the said commissioners did appoint and notify a general council of the nation to convene at New Echota on the 21st day of December, 1835, and informed them that the commissioners would be prepared to make a treaty with the Cherokee people who should assemble there, and those who did not come, they could conclude gave their assent and sanction to whatever should be transacted at this council, and the people having met the council according to the said notice. So basically, for those that couldn't make it, the representatives that you're sending, whatever they decide and whatever they sign is what you must oblige to. Therefore, the following articles of treaty are agreed upon and concluded between William Carroll and John F. Schermerhorn, commissioners on the part of the United States, and the chiefs and headmen and people of the Cherokee Nation in General Council assembled this 29th day of December, 1835. So what we're about to read is what is in this treaty and what the Cherokee agreed to based off of the 20 representatives that they sent on their behalf who were fairer skinned and looked more European to get a more favorable deal. Again, these are the same mulattoes or mixed tribal people who have been mistreated, and now all of a sudden y'all need them.
Yeah, and Oak Cliff just asked a question. I posted it in the chat just in case you didn't see it. It's spelled Schermerhorn.
I am Flying Squirrel said, let's see if they pooped on us. Well, you already know the answer to that, Flying Squirrel, but we're gonna let this this document, this one version of the document, tell the story. So it starts out before it even gets to Article 1. Cherokees relinquished to the United States all their lands east of the Mississippi. So that would be Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia. Lands in Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia.
Yeah, remember East and West when they talking. Please do remember.
So Article 1. The Cherokee Nation hereby cede, relinquish, and convey to the United States all the lands owned, claimed, or possessed by them east of the Mississippi River, and hereby release all their claims upon the United States for spoliations of every kind, for and in consideration of the sum of $5 million to be expended, paid, and invested in the manner stipulated and agreed upon in the following articles. But as a question has arisen between the commissioners and the Cherokees whether the Senate, in their resolution by which they advised that a sum not exceeding $5 million be paid to the Cherokee Indians for all of their lands and possessions east of the Mississippi River, have included and have any allowance or consideration for claims for spoliations, it is therefore agreed on the part of the United States that this question shall be again submitted to the Senate for their consideration and decision if no allowance was made for spoliations, that then an additional sum of $300,000 be allowed for the same. So right now, as of this Article 1, they're going to receive $5 million. But it looks like the Cherokee Indians want an additional $300,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, could this $300,000 be for those 20, I'm using air quotes, that negotiated the deal?
Sound like a plot to me.
That was a question, not an accusation.
Yep, just a question.
Treaty of May 1828 and February 1833 refer to Article 2. Whereas by the Treaty of May 6, 1828, and the supplementary treaty thereto of February 14, 1833, with the Cherokee west of the Mississippi, the United States granted and secured to be conveyed by patent to the Cherokee Nation of Indians the following tract of country, beginning at a point of the old western territorial line of Arkansas Territory, beginning 25 miles north from the point where the territorial line crosses the Arkansas River, thence running from said north point south on said territorial line, where the said territorial line crosses Pedigrees River, hence down said Pedigrees River to the Arkansas River, hence down said Arkansas to a point where a stone is placed opposite the east or lower bank of Grand River at its junction with the Arkansas. Hold on. Are they pointing out rocks?
Yeah, if you want, let me give you advice because when I read over this piece, there's a whole lot of hints. You can skim down to how many acres it is, yeah, because it's a couple of hundred acres that they finna walk you through rocks, lands, lines.
Okay, so I see what you're saying at the bottom of the paragraph.
Yeah,
Okay.
they got a whole lot of hints. This way, that way, 5 steps this way.
Turn
Go
left at
under the owl. Go
Yeah.
under the owl. Back over by the tree. You know that type of too
Okay,
much.
let me go ahead and look at the chat. LJ Free says immigration 1640s removal from a place, move away, depart from a place, from assimilated from the X out CX, migrate to move, from pi root mid to change go move. Pamela Hall says, okay, wait, how they come up with 5 million when this country was broke? I am flying squirrel says I'm dead.
Yeah, David Corey. No, they're not talking about Florida at this time. You got to remember, once you got outside of Tennessee, that was considered Florida, going south. At this time, you got to remember the Cherokee were only in the Tennessee. Then eventually they pushed down to Alabama. All of them didn't go to Texas. It was only a set that went to Texas. Another set went to Arkansas. They basically split up and went different areas.
All right, so let's see where we at. So in addition to the 7 millions of acres of land thus provided for and bounded, the United States further guaranteed to the Cherokee Nation a perpetual outlet west and a free and unmolested use of all country west of the western boundary of 7 millions of acres, as far west as sovereignty of the United States and their rights of soil extended. So they're granting the Cherokee 7 million. Oak Cliff says 7 million.
Yep, 7 million acres, but it's more.
So proviso states, provided, however, there's always a catch, that if the saline and salt plain of the western prairies shall fall within said limits prescribed for the said outlet, the right is reserved to the United States to permit other tribes of red men to get salt on said plain in common with the Cherokees, and letters patent shall be issued by the United States as soon as they're practicable for the land hereby guaranteed. They always got to have a contingent in there.
But think about that. If they had land from, they say, west of the Mississippi to the Salt Flats. Ain't the Salt Flats Utah? I could be off, but I'm just asking basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Utah.
Ooh, that's a whole lot of space to cover.
So, additional land conveyed to the nation, etc. And whereas it is apprehended by the Cherokees that in the above section there is not contained sufficient quantity of land for the accommodation of the whole nation on their removal west of the Mississippi, the United States' consideration of the sum of $500,000, therefore, hereby covenant and agree to convey to said Indians and their descendants by patent in fee simple the following additional tract of land suited between the west line of the state of Missouri and the Osage Reservation, beginning at the southeast corner of the same and running north along the east line of Osage lands 50 miles to the northeast corner thereof, and hence east to west line of state of Missouri, thence with said line south 50 miles, thence west to the place of beginning, estimated to contain 800,000 acres of land. But it is expressly understood that if any of the lands assigned the Quapaws shall fall within the aforesaid bounds, the same shall be reserved and accepted out of the lands above granted, and a pro rata reduction shall be made in the price to be allowed to the United States for the same by the Cherokees. Basically, they reserve their right to take back some land if they see fit, according to this agreement. Further agreement of 1830, chapter 148, right to establish forts, etc. in Article 3. So, they're giving these chiefs, they're giving the Cherokee land. However, they're putting a contingent to do what? Establish forts. So if you're going to establish forts, what also are you doing? You intend on doing? Putting troops there, right? The United States also agrees that the lands above ceded by the Treaty of February 14, 1833, including the outlet, and those ceded by this treaty shall all be included in one patent executed to Cherokee Nation by Indians by the President of the United States according to the provisions of the Act of May 28, 1830. It is, however, agreed that the military reservations of Fort Gibson shall be held by the United States, but should be the United States abandon said post and have no further use of same, it shall revert to Cherokee Nation. So it says that fort is going to still be allowed to be there, and in the event that the United States has no need for that fort, it will then be given back to Cherokee Nation. The United States shall always have the right to make and establish such posts and military roads and forts in any part of the Cherokee country, as they may deem proper for the interest and protection of the same, and the free use of as much land, timber, fuel, and materials of all kinds for the construction and support of the same as may be necessary, provided that if the private rights of individuals are interfered with, a just compensation therefore shall be made. So they basically gave themselves a backdoor to retake the land.
Yeah, because at any given time they can pick out anything and say, okay, we need this. And not only can they get the land, they have rights to all resources and fuels to keep themselves supplied.
Where it says land, timber, fuel, and materials of all kinds.
Not some kind, all kind. Man, these people.
What chief would sign this treaty? I'm just saying. But anyway, the United States also stipulate and agree to extinguish, for the benefit of the Cherokee, the title to reservations within their country made in the Osage Treaty of 1825 to certain half-breeds, and for the purpose they hereby agree to pay the persons to whom the same belongs or have been assigned, or to their agents or guardians, whenever they shall execute after the ratification of this treaty or satisfactory convenience for the same to the United States, the sum of $15,000 according to a schedule accompanying this treaty of the relative value of several reservations. So who are these half-breeds that they're talking about? And it says to certain half-breeds.
Well, we got to remember, according to them, a half-breed was anybody that was mixed with anything outside of their tribe or area. If we go back to what the census stated.
And Iron Flying Squirrel said that's not a treaty, that's a repo.
Them facts.
So, missionary reservations to be paid for. And whereas these several treaties between the United States and the Osage Indians, the Union and the Harmony missionary reservations which were established for their benefits are now situated within the country ceded by them to the United States, the former being situated in the Cherokee country and the latter in the state of Missouri, it is therefore agreed that the United States shall pay the American Board of Commissioners for foreign missions for the improvements of the same, that they shall be appraised by Captain Geo Fashion, Cherokee Sub-Agent Abraham Redfield, and A.P. Chateau, or such persons as the President of the United States shall appoint, and the money allowed for the same shall be expended in schools among the Osages, and improving their condition. It is understood that the United States are to pay the amount allowed for the reservations in this article and not the Cherokee. So, missionaries' reservations are being paid by the United States. And the Harmony missionary reservations, which were established for the benefit and are now situated within the country, ceded by them to the United States. They shall... Go ahead, Bones.
I'm going to throw something in everybody's mind to think of, because what tends to happen is when we read certain things, we kind of use our understanding of now to look back at it. But at this, we have to go back to the time, and we have to use the understanding at that time. If I was a Choctaw at this time, and the woman that I married, she was Lenape, what would that child be considered? A half-breed, because they're half of two different tribes. See, we got to stop using the eyes a lot and start listening to what's written and how it's written. It'll start unraveling a whole lot.
Yeah, because so listen to how these entities are set up. It says the United States shall pay the American Board of Commissioners for foreign missions. What's that? What does that sound like to y'all? American Board of Commissioners
That's
for
an
foreign
embassy.
missions.
Embassies.
And what are embassies? 501.
501Cs.
Pamela Hall said that's why some tribes were intermarrying their cousins.
Yes, because see, the thing is how we keep looking at it a lot of times. Like we keep saying, we look at it through the eyes of today,
Mm-hmm.
to where we tend to see color is how we divide things. You got to remember the concept of race. What we were taught today is not what people were being taught in the 1700s. Anybody that mixed with anybody outside of your tribe or your area is considered a half-breed.
Yep. Grand Rising and Aboriginal Power. Welcome back, Golden Moon.
Because also remember, the term mulatto exists at this time.
Yep.
Joseph Brant and them were considered mulattoes. Those were Indians and Europeans mixed. So the half-breeds must be Indians mixing with different sets of Indians. Or why would they label them as two different sets of people?
Keep them hard heads on. So the United States is paying this nonprofit to set up these schools, Indian schools, for further indoctrination. And some of these Indian schools will later go on to become what? Universities. Like there's a university out in the western part of Virginia that sits on Tutelo and Monacan land, and we know it as Virginia Tech.
Much respect and shouts out to Danielle Jeffers this rising. Keep doing that great work.
And for the longest time, most people didn't know what a Hokie was. Well, if the land sits on Tutelo land, and Tutelo was a language that the Catawba and Monacan spoke, and they're also known as Turkey people, then a Hokie is Tutelo for Turkey. Gobble gobble.
Virginia Tech show you that all the time when you look at that mascot right in front of your face. We too busy partying.
So let's go into the land permanently ceded to the nations, Article 5. The United States hereby covenant and agree that the land ceded to the Cherokee Nation in the foregoing article shall in no future time, without their consent, be included within the territorial limits or jurisdictions of any state or territory, but they shall secure the Cherokee Nation the right by their national councils to make and carry into effect all such laws as they may deem necessary for the government and protection of the persons and property within their own country belongings to their people or such persons as have connected themselves with them, provided always that they shall not be consistent with the Constitution of the United States, and such acts of Congress have been or may be passed regulating trade and intercourse with the Indians, and also they shall not be considered as extending to such citizenship and army of the United States as may travel or reside in the Indian country by permission according to the laws and regulations established by the government of the same. So that talks about protection of this permanent ceded land. Why would they need protection? Because their tribes is going to try to take it, right? That's the reason why you would need a fort. That would be the reason for them placing a fort in certain spots of the land for the protection, and I'm using air quotes, of the tribes. Right? So now you have ceded land that's going to have Indian schools and forts with the military on it. Peace to be preserved, Article 6. Perpetual peace and friendship shall exist between the citizens of the United States and the Cherokee Indians. The United States agrees to protect the Cherokee Nation from domestic strife and foreign enemies and against internecine wars between the several tribes. Cherokee shall endeavor to preserve and maintain the peace of the country and not make war upon their neighbors. They shall also be protected against interruption and intrusion from citizens of the United States who may attempt to settle in the country without their consent. And all such persons shall be removed from the same by order of the President of the United States. But this is not intended to prevent the residents among them of useful farmers, mechanics, and teachers for the intrusion of Indians according to the treaty stipulations. Wait a minute. It says, but this is not intended to prevent the residents among them of useful farmers, mechanics, and teachers for the intrusion of Indians according to the treaty stipulations.
That's what King was talking about, allowed them. That's the mechanism that allowed them to come in and get farmlands and mechanize it. We hearing the writing and the construction of it right now. Ain't that something?
And L.J. Free said the Cherokees sound like the precursor for the ideology of the America being a melting pot. Yeah, because what they're saying is these people, these citizens are not allowed to live on this part of the land, but you cannot keep them from coming in and help farm and learn how to farm, go to school on your land, and actually teach your children. Because what do they know about our people? They know that once we get to know these people and we work with them, what's going to happen? They're going to end up becoming part of the family, right? They're going to end up being adopted.
Yep. And it tells you the Cherokee adopted them. Well, the Cherokee tell you they adopted them. Right along with the Delaware. I know. It'll make you wanna.
All right, so Congress may allow a delegate from the Cherokee Nation, Article 7. Great progress in civilization and deeming it important that every proper and laudable inducement, be offered to their people to improve their conditions as well as guard and secure in the most effectual manner the rights guaranteed to them in this treaty, and with a view to illustrate the liberal and enlarged policy of the government of the United States towards the Indians in their removal beyond the territorial limits of the states. It is stipulated that they shall be entitled to a delegate in the House of Representatives of the United States whenever Congress shall make provisions for the same. So they're giving representation of a delegate to the Cherokee Nation. That explains how Chief Cornstalk, and how Corn Plants, and Chief Brant were offered positions of governorship or politics after these treaties were signed.
Yeah. They turned out to be some of your first congressmen and political representatives. We were talking about it last night. I keep forgetting the dude name. The one that sent the Choctaw out west and the ones that stayed became citizens, and he became the governor of in Mississippi. If that wasn't dirty.
No. LJ Free says, get under the umbrella and enjoy some of the perks of the deal. Not coming under the agreements made you an outsider and eventually a citizen. Level the playing field for the colonizers and mulattoes. Exactly.
Yep. That's why we say we don't run from the system. We finna learn it and use it because it is our ancestors. Play ball.
Expenses of removal to be paid by the United States, Article 8. The United States also agreed and stipulated to remove the Cherokee to their new homes and to submit them 1 year after their arrival there, and that a sufficient number of steamboats and barge wagons shall be furnished to remove them comfortably and so as to not endanger their health, and that a physician well supplied with medicines shall accompany them. Detachment of immigrants removed by the government. Such persons and families, in the opinion of the immigrated agent, with an E, are capable of subsisting and removing themselves shall be permitted to do so, and they shall be allowed in full for all claims for the same $20 for each member in their family, and in lieu of their 1 year's rations, they shall be paid the sum of $33.33 if they prefer it. So they said, according to this treaty, they're going to have sufficient number of steamboats and barge wagons. What happened to making people walk on foot? What about the Trail of Tears? What happened?
I was saying that before. I remember we've been started having these discussions. Like, hold on, if they got steamboats and this and that, ain't nobody walking.
And there's going to be a physician well supplied with medicines and accompany each detachment of immigrants removed. So each detachment basically means each sector or each group. They're not even all leaving at the same time. They're moving in a convoy of either barge wagons or steamboats.
And you even come down to find out as you read on, they were provided a train conductor, a train, a frigadier to drop off supplies.
And then
not to mention that we're reading from the actual treaty. That's the part that's crushing.
So somebody been lying. I'm just saying.
A whole lot.
So it says such persons and family as in the opinion of their immigrated agent. Remember, each group had an agent. Remember the agents. Remember what the purpose of the agent was? To get these tribes and people assimilated.
Yep. To abandon Indian ways and pick up European culture.
So such persons and families as in the opinion of the immigrating agent. So they have an agent who's representing them, who reads and translates for them. 9 times out of 10 is who? A mulatto. Somebody is mixed with them, the Indians, and us.
And what did these Indian agents? What did they become in the future that a lot of people know them as today? If you don't mind me asking, TMH.
Superintendents.
That's school superintendents. Oh my!
Don't believe me? Do the research.
Nah.
We also did a build on it. So yeah. So for those that didn't want to go with the caravan or the convoy and wanted to go on their own based off of what their agent suggested, they were paid a rations to get them through. So it also reads such Cherokee. Go ahead.
No, just making sure we ain't lose nobody in the chat. I see Oak Cliff say, need a minute. Everybody doing all right? You know, we ain't mean to drop it on y'all like this, but gotta get this info out. Hot potato.
I am flying squirrel said I heard of an Indian agent signing over land of some of our people who couldn't read. Again, I am flying squirrel. You're absolutely right, but you gotta understand, a lot of these tribes spoke multiple languages. You gotta realize some of these tribes were speaking French and Spanish, but they didn't speak English.
Yeah, come to find out, French and Spanish was very well spoken among a lot of our ancestors.
Free says, and don't forget, immigrated with an E, removal, to be X'd out for the sake and context of that treaty. So just because they were illiterate in English don't mean they were illiterate or learn. A lot of these tribes do multiple languages. It's no different than somebody coming over here from, let's just say, Britain, and they know multiple languages. Or someone coming over here from Afghanistan or Iraq, they know multiple languages.
You gotta remember, they got schools already. Their schools already set up already at this time. So listen, man.
And also too, let's take this in consideration. Children learn to either speak English first or read English first. Think about it. Children go to school already speaking and understand English. They just have to be taught how to read. So you have to take in mind or take in consideration, there were a lot of tribes that spoke English. They just couldn't read it.
Yep.
So that don't, again, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when we are talking about, the illiteracy rate of these tribes.
That's why we were saying earlier, when we read, we have to remember the year that we're reading in, and make sure that we apply this information to these years, and you can see it a lot more clearer.
So it's also read, such Cherokees also as reside at present out of the nation, and shall remove with them in 2 years west of the Mississippi, shall be entitled to allowance for removal and subsistence as above provided. So they had 2 years to move. So it wasn't like it was just depicted that everybody had to move. They came in and started barging at people's doors and making them move. And all of a sudden there was this long, drawn out death march. This is the treaty according to what was signed by the United States and the Cherokees. So this can be looked up to be verified. So again, somebody's lying.
Yeah, this treaty, it's also on record with the Federal Registry. Yes, it's in Congress, so yeah.
So, agents to value improvements made by Cherokees, Article 9. The United States agreed to appoint suitable agents who shall make a just and fair evaluation of all such improvements now in the possession of the Cherokees as add any value to the lands, and also of the ferries owned by them. Wait, what? Cherokees own ferries?
Yeah, it's gonna get deeper. Not only ferries, frigadiers, stage coaches.
According to their net income and such improvements as ferries from which they have been disposed in a lawful manner or under any existing law of the state where the same may be situated. So let me get this right. Cherokees own ferries and other... So they just want a bunch of people in wigwams?
No, they had ferries. Don't forget about the steamboats. A little bit later on, you're going to get into like the train conductors and stuff that was awarded to them from the United States. Oh, and there's more.
Wow. So it reads, in just debts of the Indians shall be paid out of any monies due them their improvements and claims, and they shall also be furnished at the discretion of the President of the United States with a sufficient sum to enable them to obtain the necessary means to remove themselves to their new homes. To remove themselves to their new homes. To their new homes. And the balance of their dues shall be paid them at the Cherokee Agency west of the Mississippi. The missionary establishment shall also be valued and appraised in a like manner, and that amount of them paid over the United States to the treasurers of the respective missionary societies by whom they have been established and improved in order to enable them to erect such buildings and make such improvements among the Cherokees west of the Mississippi as they may deem necessary for their benefit. Such teachers at present among the Cherokees as this council may select and designate shall be removed west of the Mississippi with the Cherokee Nation and on the same terms allowed to them. David Corey says, now trains, planes, yeah. And if it was the 1930s, it would have been automobiles too. But I digress.
Oak Cliff says Section 8. No, this could fall under Section 3. Let me stop. Yeah, it can.
Yeah, it can.
Community block grants, rural developmental grants. That's what we know them as today. But we're seeing the starting mechanism of them. When you think about it, everything started from something.
Grand Rising, James Gilmore. We are going over the Treaty of 1839, otherwise known as the Great Sellout. That's my term for it.
Yeah, no.
Jeffrey says, as we know, this is the original old world, and we had everything over here at our disposal. That's why the rest of the world boomed after we were taken over. Facts.
Yeah, no, Cliff. We got a couple of episodes prior to where we broke down a lot more of this stuff, how it all ties in. I don't know if you got the chance to see any of them.
Yeah, we have. We did a whole series of the Indian Wars, and we went from the early 1500s all the way down to the American Revolutionary War, which is where we're at now.
Yeah, on the Cherokees.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Appreciate that.
So, the president to make investment in productive stock, Article 10. That just doesn't even sound right. The president to make investments in productive stock. Sounds like the president has a sincere investment in these Cherokee Indians, huh?
This is the second time he's referred to as by name in these articles.
Cliff says I caught up last night. Okay, so I'm doing some binge watching out here. All right. The President of the United States shall invest in some safe and most productive public stocks of the country for the benefit of the whole Cherokee Nation who have removed or shall remove to the lands assigned by this treaty to the Cherokee Nation west of the Mississippi the following sums as a permanent fund for the purpose hereafter specified, and pay over the net income of same annually to such persons as shall be authorized or appointed by the Cherokee Nation to receive same, and their receipt shall be full discharge for the amount paid to them, viz. The sum of $200,000 in addition to the present annuity of the nations to constitute a general fund, the interest of which shall be applied annually by the council of the nation to such purposes as they may deem best for the general good of their people. Layman's term. We're not going to give you Bamas all this money at once. The president reserves the right to invest this money in public stock, because remember, the stock market is already booming. And you will receive an annuity, and you will receive other forms of subsidy, and it will be paid to your appointed council. And they will then disseminate the monies throughout your tribe.
Ain't that is the stock market when you think about it? Because all they did was took that money allotment, invested it in infrastructure and different things. Then at the end of the year, you got a return off of it. Sound like the predecessor of Indians taxed and not taxed to me. Could be wrong.
Very interesting. The sum of $50,000 to constitute an orphans fund, the annual income of which shall be expended towards the support and education of such orphan children as are destitute of the means of subsistence. The sum of $150,000 in addition to the present school fund of the nation shall constitute a permanent school fund, the interest of which shall be applied annually by the council of the nation for the support of common schools and such a literary institution of a higher order as may be established in the Indian country. So let me stop right there. If we are to understand tribes, if something happens to a tribal member, that child normally goes to the sister or brother of that tribal member that passed. So here's a $1 million question. Who are these orphans they talking about? And they're putting aside $50,000 in the 1800s for a preschool fund for orphans. Who are the orphans? Because if these people are going to be on their tribal land, they're going to continue their tribal ways according to this treaty. So who are the orphans?
Huh? Watch it. Info falling again. Keep them hats on.
Just something to think about. And in order to secure as far as possible the true and beneficial application of the Orphans and School Fund, the Council of the Cherokee Nation, when required by the President of the United States, shall make a report of the application of those funds, and he shall at all times have the right, if the funds have been misapplied, to correct any abuse of them and direct the manner of their application for the purpose for which they were intended. The Council of the Nation may be given 2 years' notice of their intention withdraw their funds by and with the consent of the President and Senate of the United States, and invest them in such a manner as they may deem most proper for their interests. The United States also agrees to stipulate and pay the just debts and claims against the Cherokee Nation held by the citizens of the same, and also the just claims of citizens of the United States for service rendered to the nation, and the sum of $60,000 is appropriated for this purpose, but no claims against individual persons on the nation shall be allowed and paid by the nation. The sum of $300,000 is thereby set apart to pay and liquidate the just claims of Cherokees upon the United States for spoliations of every kind that have not been already satisfied under the former treaties. So any other thing that comes up, that $350,000 should take care of. Excuse me, $300,000. But my question is, who are these orphans? But anyway, commutation of school fund, Article 11. The Cherokee Nation or Indians, believing it will be for the interest of their people to have all their funds and annuities under their own direction and future disposition, hereby agree to commute their permanent annuity of $10,000 for the sum of $214,000, the same being invested by the President of the United States as part of the general fund of the nation, and their present school funds amount to about $50,000 shall constitute a part of permanent school fund of the nation. So they're allocating a whole lot of money aside for these schools. Sounds like they set money aside to build some of these universities. Maybe it's just me. Provisions respecting Cherokees averse to removal, Article 12. Now this is where it gets deep. Remember the names that we talked about when it came to the actual people that were negotiating on behalf of the Cherokees that were moving west of the Mississippi. So I want you to pay attention to some of these names and pay close attention to this provision. So this Article 12 is specifically for those Cherokees who are averse to removal from the lands east of the Mississippi. So these are people who don't want to go. Okay? Those individuals and families of the Cherokee Nation that are averse to removal to the Cherokee country west of the Mississippi and are desirous to become citizens of the states where they reside, and such as qualified to take care of themselves and their property, shall be entitled to receive their due portion of all the personal benefits occurring under this treaty for their claims, improvements per capita, as soon as the appropriation is made for this treaty. So let me get this straight. You're going to tell these Indians that don't want to leave that not only do they get to stay, but they get benefit of everything that's under this treaty as a claim per capita. L.J. Free reads, orphans, parentless children, or minus your motherland. 100 years later, the Negroes are still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. MLK. Grand Rising, Kerry, man.
And let's not forget something that was read when we first started this rising, that people it'll be easy to forget. These Cherokee here are not the original Cherokee of the area. Remember, the original Cherokee of the area moved, went into Alabama, North Carolina, and Georgia. These are the eastern band of the fugitives that ran to the mountains that later on came down, that they let and gave parts of North Carolina to.
So you mean these are the Melungeons?
Yeah, when the story started, they considered them to be fugitives. When the Cherokee were fighting the U.S. and they were moving, that they ran away up into the mountains. And later on, they're the start of what you would consider the Eastern Band Cherokee today. So and that's back on the first link that we put up in the chat if people wanted to read further into it.
So if anybody is familiar with the Melungeons, these were the individuals that were amalgamation or a mixture of, in this instance, Cherokee, what they call slaves, and European descent.
Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, since we are pointing out all the different players that's here, let's not forget about the children that were born from the colonies that didn't consider themselves to have no allegiance to Britain. And wasn't they also allowed to identify as a tribe?
Yep.
See, when people be talking about your first Americans, that's your first set of Americans that had no allegiance to nobody.
Yeah, because this continent wasn't called America by the tribes. But anyway,
Another story for another day.
such heads of Cherokee families as are desirous to reside within the states of North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, subject to the laws of the same, and who are qualified or calculated to become useful citizens, shall be entitled. Let me back this up. Who are qualified or calculated to become useful citizens shall be entitled. And the reason why that is important is because you got to realize at this particular time, alcoholism is running rampant through these tribes. Remember, rum and smallpox was responsible for a lot of deaths. So you got functioning alcoholics that are tribal members. So if you're too drunk to work, then you are not considered a useful citizen.
And then I can deem to do as I shall please. Oh, and LJ said, repeat that again. No, all I was just saying is when we do history, we tend to forget that there were a set of people that were born here. They had no allegiance to no tribes here, and they had no allegiance to no allegiance to the 13 colonies. We got to remember, that's your Americans.
Yep. And you're Native Americans because they were born here, because their families would come from somewhere else, but they were born here, so they're Native Americans, which is the reason why they were allowed to become a tribe.
And that's the reason why you can't remove them, because they were born here. They know no other mother country.
So you can try to remove them. Good luck. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, we don't like it. We just telling it how it is.
Okay. So such heads of Cherokee families as are desirous to reside within the states, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, subject to the laws of the same, and who are qualified to be calculated to become U.S. citizens shall be entitled on the certificate of the commissioners to a preemption right to 160 acres of land, or 1/4 section at the minimum Congress price, so as to include the present buildings or improvements of those who now reside there, and such as do not live there at present shall be permitted to locate within 2 years any lands not already occupied by persons entitled to preemption privileges under this treaty, and in 2 or more families live on the same quarter section, and they desire to continue their residence in these states and are qualified as above, they shall, on receiving their preemption certificate, be entitled to the right of preemption to such lands as they may select, not already taken by any person entitled to them under this treaty. So they're basically saying that those who have been deemed useful and want to be a citizen, and the commission has given its blessing, you will be given the right to 160 acres of land, or 1/4 section at the minimum Congress price. Eminent domain. So another story. So all these things that we're seeing in these treaties are preemptive of what's going to happen to our people as we start to maneuver as citizens, and we're forced into citizenship because we don't read, and because we don't get involved, and because we don't. Never mind. So another story. Anyway,
Trelatiers is what year?
that was in
1831.
Yeah, the 1830s.
You notice we're in the 1830s, ain't we?
1839.
Oh my goodness. Think about it.
You muted yourself.
This is the paper trail of the so-called Trail of Tears. Because if they're sitting here negotiating, moving and this and that,
Grand Rising,
I gotta
Trav.
sit down. I gotta sit down.
All right, so pay attention to these names because y'all have heard them before, and I've read them before. It is stipulated and agreed between the United States and the Cherokee people. So the United States and the Cherokee people agreed that these individuals, John Ross, who is the then chief, James Starr, George Hicks, John Gunther, George Chambers, John Ridge, Elias Benoit, George Sanders, John Martin, William Rogers, Roman Noyes Sidawak, and John Timpson shall be a committee on the part of the Cherokees to recommend such persons for the privilege of preemption rights as may be deemed entitled to the same under the above articles, and to select the missionaries who shall be removed with the nation. And they be hereby fully empowered and authorized to transact all business on the part of the Indians which may arise in carrying into effect the provisions of this treaty and settling the same with the United States. If any of the persons above mentioned should decline acting or be removed by death, the vacancy shall be filled by the committee themselves.
TMH, do you remember when we looked up the Trail of Tears, where the real Trail of Tears started?
Started up north. Started northeast. If I'm not mistaken, up by
And all this is pre-Civil War, right?
Yeah.
This is forming of the North. Remember, at this time, they ain't going no further than Tennessee. Isn't that the dividing line to this day?
Yeah, pretty much.
Brain just painting a picture.
So these individuals are the representatives who determine who's going to get the land, who's going to get the money, who's deemed as citizens. So they make the decision. These are the representatives. Remember, these were the lightly melanated, fair-complected individuals that were sent as representatives to negotiate on behalf of the whole tribe. It is also understood and agreed that the sum of $100,000 shall be expended by the commissioners in such manners as the committee may deem best for the benefit of the poorer class of Cherokees as shall remove west and have removed west and are entitled to the benefits of this treaty. The same to be delivered at the Cherokee Agency west of soon after removal of the nation as possible. Wait, back up. What do you mean the poor class of Cherokees? I thought the Cherokees was running a matriarchal society. So how did these Cherokees become poor? Unless they were the Cherokees who chose not to go off code and were ousted. Indigenous Intelligence says, I'm going to have to change my work hours around this show. I feel like I'm timed out. The good news, Indigenous Intelligence, is that this is recorded, so you're fine, bro. You're fine. Pamela Hall says, because TMH, they were the dark-skinned ones. That's what I'm thinking, Pamela Hall. The poorer Cherokees were the dark-skinned ones. And I'm not talking about the freedmen. You got to realize, by this time in the 1800s, there are melanated chiefs, lightly melanated chiefs, the ones that are the representative, the ones that are working with the Europeans who have allegiance on both sides, who's going to put their family members in the best light. Because if we go back and do the research, what we'll find is that when the Algonquins, or the Haudenosaunee, split, those that split and went to the United States, they end up becoming citizens, and you didn't hear anything about them anymore. You know why? Because they became the members of Congress. They became our presidents. They're the family ties to this country. That's why when you do the research and you do the lineage, you will see that almost all of the presidents in the United States have indigenous ties to an Algonquin chief. Don't believe me? Please do the research. So there's already been a split between the light-colored or the lightly melanated tribes and the darker tribes. That's the reason why they talk about a poor class of Cherokees. So, just something to think about. David Core says, I'm just appreciative of my wrench. Pamela Hall said those was part of the $5 Indians. Pamela Hall is deeper than that. The $5 Indians was specifically and exclusively for the Dawes Roll after they got to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
This was if you go back and look at what was exposed to us, this is over 250 years of tribes intermarrying with the Europeans, whether they were Acadian or Dutch. Because you talk about individuals like Cornplanter and Joseph Brant, who had an empress chief for a mother and a father who was a high-ranking European in the military, whether it was the Dutch or whether it was the French military. Remember our ancestors allowed a lot of these Quakers, Jesuits, and Mormons to come in and teach our children because we wanted to assimilate more into the United States or to the European culture.
Mm-hmm. They wanted to be Europeans. What? I forgot the chief name that invited the Quakers. He sent for the Quakers to come.
And she says, Pamela Hall says, she said it looks to me like it was using this a long time. I told you I found a lot of mix in my family. So did I, Pamela Hall. So do I. So.
Yep.
But it was not just because of rape and things of that nature or force as we were taught to believe. A lot of this was perpetuated by our ancestors because they wanted to assimilate more into the royalty side of the Europeans. It was something new. You know how we like new, shiny, and different. I'm just saying.
And you got to ask yourself, why will we be told the stories that they were raped and all this? Think about it. That teaches you to hate. So now you're so mad and you're so hateful at it, you never take up the time to learn what it is and to participate in it. Think about it. Even growing up, why do we stay away from a lot of these mechanisms? Because what we was told and the emotional triggers that it does to us. We remember school when they showed us that Roots movie. Come on now.
And for the record, that Roots movie was not actual and factual. He had a $650,000 lawsuit that he lost in 1979, and the movie was put out. The miniseries, was put out in 1979. You can Google it all day long and find that out. But they still perpetuate and they still push that.
It was an emotional trigger. The same emotional triggers that they keep using to stop us from plugging into our ancestors' system. The reason they made us hate it, because they can't lock us out. We're the ones locking ourselves out.
So settlement of claims for former reservations, Article 13. And the further we go down this hole, the deeper it gets. We might have to cut on our headlights from our hard hats. Article 13 reads, in order to make a final settlement of all claims of the Cherokees for reservations granted under former treaties of any individuals belonging to the nation by the United States, it is therefore hereby stipulated and agreed and expressly understood by the parties of this treaty that all the Cherokees and their heirs and descendants of whom any reservations have been made under any former treaties with the United States and who have not sold or conveyed the same by deed or otherwise, and who in opinion of the commissioners have complied with the terms on which the reservations were granted as far as participable in the several cases in which reservations have since been sold by the United States shall constitute a just claim against the United States, and the original reserve or their heirs or descendants shall be entitled to receive the present value thereof from the United States as unimproved lands. And all such reservations have not been sold by the United States, and where the terms in which the reservations were made in the opinion of the commissioners have been compiled with as far as practicable, they or their heirs or descendants shall be entitled to the same. They are hereby granted and confirmed to them. And also all persons who have entitled to reservations under the Treaty of 1817, and who as far as practical, in the opinion of the commissioners, have complied with the stipulations of said treaty, although by Treaty of 1819 such reservations were included in the unceded lands belonging to the Cherokee Nation, are hereby confirmed to them, and they shall be entitled to receive a grant for the same. And all such reservations were obliged by the laws of the states in which their reservations were suited to abandon the same or purchase from the United States shall be deemed to have just claim against the United States for the amount by them paid to the United States with the interest thereof for such reservations, and if obliged to abandon the same to the reservation value, such reservations as unimproved lands. But in all cases where the reserves have sold their reservations or any part thereof and conveyed the same by deed and otherwise, and have been paid for the same, they, their heirs and descendants, or their assigns, shall not be considered as having any claims upon the United States under the article of treaty, nor be entitled to receive any compensation for the lands thus disposed of. It is expressly understood by the parties of this treaty that the amount to be allowed for reservations under this article shall not be deducted out of the consideration money allowed to the Cherokees for their claim for spoliation and cessation of their lands, but the same is to lie paid for independently by the United States, as it is only a just fulfillment of former treaty stipulations. That long paragraph was basically to say, we got it, you ain't getting it back. Don't come try suing for it, because you're not gonna get anything because your signature's on this line, and we got it. So let it go. Pensions to certain warriors. To certain warriors, Article 14. It is also agreed on the part of the United States that such warriors of the Cherokee Nation were engaged on the side of the United States in the later war with Great Britain, and the southern tribes of the Indians who were wounded in such service shall be entitled to such pensions as shall be allowed them by the Congress of the United States to commence from the period of disability. Wait a minute. When did Cherokees fight on the side of the United States? That wasn't stipulated in the Indian Wars.
Eventually they did.
Interesting.
Where do y'all think the United States, which started with 13 British colonies, got a military from? They didn't send that many people over here. Not men, not to be fighting in no wars. Because if that's the case, who these politicians that's doing all this talking and writing stuff down?
Because they sure ain't fighting. That's for sure.
Why they building forts and Indians are manning the forts? We also got to remember what are happening to these tribes. As they make deals with the U.S. government, these tribes are becoming the U.S. citizens. That's where the U.S. population came from so fast. Converted Indians. Remember, they didn't start bringing people into the boatloads like that until like the late 1890, top of the 1900s. Right after they redid the little Civil Rights Act deal. Right after the Congress of 1906. Remember, World War I was what? 1914? Oh, going a little bit too far, my bad. But think about it. After World War I is when you had your major influx of Europeans that came here. Because remember, Europe got devastated. They didn't have no home, so they bought a bunch of them coming this way. Remember the Titanic?
Mm-hmm.
So your first citizens were nothing but converted Indians. Because after they did the deals, you never hear about these tribes in written history no more. They ain't disappeared, they became citizens.
Gotta love it.
Man.
So funds to be divided among the Indians, Article 15. It is expressly understood and agreed between the parties to this treaty that after deducting the amount which shall be actually expended for the payment for improvements, ferries, claims for spoliations, removal, substances, and debts, and claims upon the Cherokee Nation, and for the additional quantity of lands and goods for the poor class of Cherokees, and the several sums to be invested for the General National Fund, provided for in several articles of this treaty, the balance, whatever the same may, shall be equally divided between all people belonging to the Cherokee Nation East, according to the census just completed. I'm going to read that part again.
Please do.
Now you're starting to see why the census was important. Because this treaty is basically telling you why. It is expressly understood and agreed between the parties to this treaty that after deducting the amount which shall be actually expended for the payment for improvements, ferries, claims for spoliations, removal, substance, and debts, and claims upon the Cherokee Nation for the additional quantity of lands, goods for poor class Cherokees, and the several sums to be invested for the General National Funds provided for in several articles of this treaty, the balance, whatever the same, may be equally divided between all people belonging to the Cherokee Nation East, according to the census just completed.
Ain't that something?
So you have the people being represented, right? Don't you think that people would know who their people are? Why is the census determining who is a Cherokee and who's not? Because remember, this time there are enumerators that are deciding who is who and who is what. Self-determination does not happen until 1970. This is 1838. And this is even before then, because it talks about 1833. So the Cherokees aren't even determining who they are. The census takers or the enumerators are.
Yep. And what did the census have to deal with again? Land allotments, land ownership,
resources.
No, we ain't finna participate. Leave the census alone. We don't do that. Really? Like I said, a lot of these things we backed away from are the reasons we're in this situation right now. I'm gonna say it again, time to step up to the plate and play ball.
American Leo says, why are the rows of different census added later? Because that's another form of paper genocide. In order to remove people, you have to get the lie straight. You can always, like I say, hindsight is 20/20. So if you can put the rows up after the fact, separate the melanated Cherokee from the non-melanated Cherokee and call them freedmen after the fact, because we got to remember, this didn't get done until after everybody got settled. So it's easy to do that after the fact.
Yeah, don't forget, we're in the 1830s. Emancipation didn't even happen. Matter of fact, man, think about what didn't even go down yet. They set it up on paper. Now it makes you look at these wars and stuff like, was it really a war? When you seeing what's already set up on paper, they already got the treaties on how they were going to divide the land up before the Civil War and all this stuff even started.
David Corey, Walter Plunkett came in existence in the early 1900s. So eugenics, or the form of eugenics, started between 1940 and 1960, and that was for certain parts of Virginia and North Carolina. But I understand what you're saying. So you got to realize they were getting ready because they already knew and they had already planned for self-determination. But at this particular time, they didn't need eugenics because the enumerators were the ones determining who was who for the census. But I understand your point. Oak Cliff says, I had a relative who was jailed for passing. Yeah, that was probably during the time of Walter Plecker.
Just think about it. These are the negotiations after the American Revolution. After the American Revolution and before the so-called Civil War.
So it says, and such Cherokees as have removed west since June 1833, who are entitled by the terms of their enrollment and removal to all benefits resulting from the final treaty between the United States and Cherokees East, they shall also be paid for their improvements according to their approved values before their removal, where fraud was not already been shown in their evaluation. Back up. Such Cherokees as have removed west since June 1833, who are entitled by the terms of their enrollment and removal to all benefits resulting from the final treaty between the United States and the Cherokee East, they shall also be paid for their improvements according to their approved value before their removal were found was not already been shown in their value, where fraud was not already been shown in their valuation. Why would they put that in there?
Because I already see what would go down. You let Indians who stayed on the east receive benefits, and you gave benefits to Indians that went on the west. So, if I'm gonna be slick, I'm gonna split my family in half, and y'all gonna go west to get them benefits, and I'm gonna stay east to get them benefits, and we're gonna put them all together.
I guess that's one way to look at it.
People were stealing land. Think about it.
People were stealing land. Inappropriate people were having land. People were giving land. Had a verse in $5 Indians happening.
Because don't later on the Cherokee make it illegal for them to start selling land to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
This could probably be why. People were starting coming in. I mean, come on, y'all. People are people. You know what I'm saying? People do it now. People were doing it back then. Greed has always been around. People are going to find ways to try to get what they can get for them.
True. So, Article 16. Then we're going to wrap this up and put it in a nice little bow. Indians to remove in 2 years. Article 16. It is hereby stipulated and agreed by the Cherokee that they shall remove to their new homes within 2 years from the ratification of this treaty, and that during such time the United States shall protect and defend them in their possessions and property and free use and occupation of the same, and such person as has been disposed of their improvement in houses, and for which no grant was usually issued previously to an act of the law of the state of Georgia of December 1835 to regulate Indian occupancy shall be again put in possession and placed in the same situation and condition. In reference to the laws of the United States of Georgia as the Indians who have not been disposed, and if this is not done and the people left unprotected, then the United States shall pay the several Cherokees for their losses and damages sustained by them in consequence thereof. And it is also stipulated and agreed that the public buildings and improvements on which they are situated at the new Echota, for which no grant has been actually made previously to the passage of the above recited act, if not occupied by the Cherokee people, shall be reserved for the public and free use of the United States and the Cherokee Indians for the purpose of settling and closing all the Indians' business arising under this treaty between the commissioners of claims and the Indians. And it says, the United States and the several states interested in the Cherokee lands shall immediately proceed to survey the lands seceded by the treaty, but it is expressly agreed and understood between the parties that the agency buildings and the tract of land surveyed and laid off for the use of Colonel J. Mingus, Indian agent, or therefore or heretofore enjoyed and occupied by his successors in office shall continue subject to the use and occupancy of the United States or such agents as may be engaged, especially superintending the removal of the tribe. Again, further ensuring their power. Oh, Cliff says, I haven't heard them mention one African yet. AJ Free says, we went from being tribal to having an every man for himself mentality. How far we fallen. So let's look at this for a second, Bones, in chat. What are the disadvantages of giving someone 2 years to move and having enumerators decide whether or not you're Cherokee, mulatto, Negro? Black wasn't in existence then. What are the deterrents for doing that? Because you got 2 years of census taking, and remember the land is being surveyed the whole time. So they're giving these tribes, these Cherokee, 2 years to move. But while in these 2 years, they're already rezoning the land and parceling it off.
Mm-hmm.
Right up under the feet of these individuals that are Cherokee. And the enumerators have specific orders every year of who is to be deemed what based off of how they look. Well, eye test, correct?
Yep.
So you want to know how people got moved off their land and got moved out of tribes? Here's your answer right here. Because you have a census where enumerators are coming around and saying, you are a Cherokee and you're not, and you are a Cherokee and you're not. And because these Cherokee don't read English, they may speak English, but they don't read English. Then when they're forced to come off this land because that land has been sold to an immigrant, or a sharecropping situation happens and they're forced off their own land, what happens?
And also remember this. You can be forced off your land and never left your land.
Yep.
All they did was change the name of it. Gotta remember in what time we're talking. A lot of these people didn't physically go nowhere. All they did was just rename the areas. That's why when you do your genealogy, you'll see a city belong to one area, then 10 years later it belongs to another area. Your people didn't move. They just changed the name of what they called the area.
And if you change the name of what the area is called, then you change the jurisdiction and location of the tribe that's there, because that tribe, if that tribe was residing in what was once Georgia, and then all of a sudden you make it Florida, or it's North Georgia, and all of a sudden you make it South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
According to our records, there were no Cherokees this part of South Carolina. So why are you here on this land?
So by default, you're either a citizen or now you're an immigrant. Think about it. It's in black and white on what they were doing. A lot of these people physically didn't go nowhere. 20 people got together in a room and rezoned the whole country.
And then, not having any place to go, you go to your representative looking for help. And what does he do? Or what does she do? Put you on their land, give you a plot, and you work on that land. And they call you what? A slave.
Bingo.
You don't care because you're looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, this is my representative. They're going to give me some land. At least I got somewhere to go. I got somewhere to stay because I just got kicked off my own land by the United States. Not realizing that the person that you are now working for, and on paper, they're your master, even though they may be your relative. You're being viewed as a slave on indentured servant. Go ahead, Bones.
And a lot of times, that's who signed the deal that got you kicked off your land.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget what we just read. There were representatives that the United States government was giving the money to. Then from there, it gets split to the rest of the Indians. So now when you look at some of these particular families or particular chiefs, Now you understand how they had the resources to have all this property, to have all these finances to start buying up certain things and becoming mayors of towns. Remember, the biggest injustice that was done to us was done on paper. Remember, there's only 20 people in this room that's making all these deals, man.
And unlike today, where we can actually have an alert when there's a House resolution or a bill passed, so we can actually call our representative to see, hey, what's going on with this, or what are you doing with this? They didn't have that then. We got to remember, there were many tribal members that spoke multiple languages, but they couldn't read all the language. They just knew how to speak it. And if you look at the way these contracts are written, there are a lot of unnecessary adjectives and adverbs to confuse someone who may only be able to understand basic English. That was done on purpose.
And you got to remember, these were tribal members that were picked because of the belief that they would get a better negotiation with the U.S. government or with the Americans. But these 20 people were also the mulattoes that we read earlier before that ain't nobody want around, correct?
Yep. And that mentality, based off of what I'm seeing, is, oh, now you want to use us. And before, you ain't want us around. But now all of a sudden you need us. Okay, I got something for you. Macadon 1 says, sleeping with the enemy. Yep, and the enemy is us.
Drop a bombshell on everybody real quick. Anybody ever ask themselves, why did the French back America during the Revolution? Why did the French send the Statue of Liberty as a gift? I mean, really, why? Think about it.
I don't know. They had a lot of interactions with the Haudenosaunee, who they end up calling Iroquois.
And didn't they say these Cherokee are a branch of the Iroquoian family?
Mm-hmm.
And didn't these people, these sets of Indians, have close to 150 years dealing with the French?
Yeah, almost 200 before England came over here.
So basically, when France backed America during the Revolutionary War, they were really helping their kinsmen. Technically,
yeah.
That's why they would send a gift to America, because them Americans, them people that were born here with no allegiance to no one, they're relatives of French.
And they were the ones cutting the deals with the war chiefs like Corn Planter and Joseph Brant, who had Indian mothers and high-ranking European fathers, and who would go back to Europe multiple times as a chief and considered as a what were they called? There was a title above chief but below king. You remember that? I can't remember what it's called. So they
Parliament chief.
Yeah, Parliament chiefs. So it was done for title. It was done for prestige. And we gotta be honest. The Europeans are not blameless, but we gotta harness some of the blame too. Well, our ancestors have to harness some of this blame because they sought a lot of these European ways. A lot of this stuff was not forced as being prescribed. So, I don't know. I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first nor the last time. LJ Free says, hence all the French Indian names that still survive to this day. Exactly. Kasu is a French word. Iroquois is a French word. A lot of tribes who are named in the French. So when we call these names of these tribes, that's from the perspective of the French. That's not what they call themselves. So So just
Make your mind go wild.
so basically, this is an example of what happens when we are guilty ourselves of making the assumption just because a group of us are being represented as a lighter skin, we send them to do stuff on our behalves without sending somebody who truly has our best interests at heart to go with them to see what's going on. We end up getting duped. We end up losing what we once had. That goes to show you that how you treat people, i.e. your family members, based off of looks, skin color, what have you, will come back and bite you in the butt. So we may be in the first grade people, but we're also the first grade people to be racist. We're also the first grade people to enslave people. We've had a lot of great first, but we also had a lot of bad first. So if we're gonna claim one, we definitely have to claim the other. Responsibility and accountability. It's not pretty, but it is what it is. And until we get this right, we're going to continue to be cursed. Don't believe me? Just look at what's going on in society today. Grand Rising, Jeffrey Gordon.
Grand Rising, Auntie. Glad you made it. Gordon's back in the house. Peace.
So, I guess we're gonna have to continue this tomorrow because, we haven't even gotten, we still got a lot of, we still got a lot of stuff to go through about these Cherokees. So I'm gonna put this link in the chat again, so that if you have a chance, please go through it, look at it, and if you have anything that you want to add or something that's pertinent that we should cover, by all means let us know. There's a call-in number.
Yep.
So we want to thank everybody for coming out.
Hit record like no.
And we got it. Hey David, we gotta get going because like you, we got people in our community that need our help. And we're putting this information out so that you can benefit your community, your family, and if you choose to, your tribe. That's what we're here for. That's what Auchtoctones Assembly is about. Helping individuals find their tribe, do their genealogy, tie into their tribe if their tribe is not racist, and for the record, not all tribes are majority looking like Latinos and mestizos. There are a lot of tribes that are melanated.
Yep.
So I would really encourage those with the agenda of trying to make it seem like all the tribes out there look like mestizos or not really melanated. Stop with that, because that's not cool. But again, if that's your choice, it's a free country. But there are over 1,000 state-recognized tribes. So to pick out one tribe to suit your agenda, to say that, see, don't none of us want us, don't none of them want us, that's no different than somebody pointing out one of our family members acting like an imbecile and say all black people act like that, or all melanated people act like that, or all autochthonous people act like that. So I'm just saying, if you're going to be fair, be fair. You want to claim fair, then act fair. If not, then I guess, the Most High deal with you. So.
Facts. Like I said, and TMA said it perfect. A lot of people take the identity of the so-called 5 civilized tribes and place it on all of them.
again, I understand people got agendas. You're trying to get things accomplished, and I wish you well, but karma ain't nothing to play with. Copper Color Queen says, "Peace, everybody. Oklahoma is shining a lot of light on my family from what I found out yesterday. I keep you posted later. Cherokee is all I'm saying, and this info was beneficial."
Appreciate it. I'm glad that we can help. Just doing our part.
David Copper said, "Thumbs up, yo, with my pale thumb." He's so funny.
I guess on that, any closing remarks?
No, I'm good, man. I mean, this was very beneficial. I learned a lot. I hope the chat learned a lot. And I'm looking to, move forward and go out to the community, do some more genealogy, do some more helping people with their nonprofits, and let's just get to work, man.
All right. And on that note, I guess, like we say, it's always fun when we kick it with the relatives. No place we'd rather be right now. So until the next Rising show, peace.